Hey guys, how's it going? I wanted to talk about something that has changed so much for me over the last few years, and that's when it comes to how we manage Crohn's, colitis, inflammatory bowel disease. Now, if you're like me, you have done so much digging into what foods, supplements, protocols you can go on to get better. Maybe you've worked with someone or multiple people in various forms, whether they're nutritionists, naturopaths, doctors. Maybe you've even gone down the route of trying alternative therapies like massage and acupuncture and chiro and all these various modalities that we can use to help our body achieve homeostasis. But if you're also like me, there was a point, or maybe you're at that point now, where you became really obsessed with figuring out what foods will trigger your symptoms or what diet you need to be on to live a manageable life. And when I was first diagnosed way back in 2011, I was 21 at the time. So I was really ignorant when it came to health and to food and lifestyle decisions. You know, I was drinking a lot of alcohol, I was eating a lot of processed food, and I was just a really stressed young man. But when I was diagnosed and when I was hospitalized for several months, one of the first things that I was told was food has nothing to do with your condition. It just is. This is just how it is, and this is how your life is always going to be. I know, a little harsh, right? But even then, even back then, when I really did not know a single thing about living a healthy lifestyle or holistic living, I thought that was a little bit weird. I was like, well, my stomach is the thing that is just not manageable, and everything that I'm consuming is going through me, and there's got to be some food that's better than other food when it comes to this, but also just in general. And again, back then, I really just wanted to find something in terms of medication or medical intervention that would allow me to live a life where I didn't have to think about this. I just wanted to mask the symptoms. If there was something underlying that was going on, but I didn't feel anything and I didn't have pain and I didn't have urgency. Like for me, the main thing was always keeping my urgency under control, because, I'm not sure every single person that has IBD, I don't know if their main problem is holding in their bowels, but for me, I was never really in a whole lot of pain, but I always had so many issues when it came to holding my bowels in and not shitting myself. And for me, especially as a man, and when you're growing up and when you're trying to find yourself in this world, you don't want to be in a situation where you're having to run to the bathroom or not make it at all, because that is one of the most embarrassing things that you can ever experience. So yeah, back then I really just wanted to be put on a medication that would control the urgency and would allow me to eat whatever I wanted without really having to think too much about it. But then as years went on and as I matured and as I became more curious about more things that we can do for ourselves, because really, yeah, I would be put on medications that could mask my symptoms, but every time I went to get a colonoscopy, I was told that I was still really sick, and I was told that there was still way too much inflammation. And even though the medication was doing its job from a symptoms perspective, I still had active disease, and So the medication really just wasn't working. So as you know, after years and years of this going on, I wanted to find out more about what I could be doing, right? Like, it's happening to me. Really, I'm the one that should be in control and should learn more about my body and the food that I'm putting into it and different types of modalities that I could use to be in a better place. So 2020 is when I decided to go back to school. I'm now a certified nutritional practitioner. I have a certification in holistic nutrition. However, it might surprise you, but I don't like providing nutritional advice or putting somebody on a specific diet if they have Crohn's or colitis. And I know it's like you went to school to learn more about food and what it does and what foods can be beneficial, what foods can be detrimental. But here's the thing. If you've done the digging that I have over the years and you have gone down these vicious cycles of trial and error, and you've gone down all these different rabbit holes of food and diet and protocols and supplement routines, and you've spent thousands and thousands of dollars, you'll start to realize that the more searching that you do, the more confusing the information is. You could be going on Instagram and YouTube or doing your Google searches, and you will find 3 or 4 or 5 various diets or protocols that somebody either advised or somebody used to heal themselves or get themselves into a place that they were in remission. But there's all these conflicting arguments and principles that go against each other. You could have one person telling you that they heal themselves on a completely vegan diet. You can have another person saying that their symptoms went away and they're feeling the best that they've ever felt on the carnivore diet. You can have another person saying that keto is the best diet for you, or like a low carbohydrate diet, a low FODMAP diet, the specific carbohydrate diet, and these diets go on and on and on. And that only adds stress to the whole situation of figuring it out. And that's a great segue into really what I believe is the key here, and it's stress. And I think that there's practitioners out there. There's somebody like the amazing Gabor Mate who will tell you that stress is the underlying cause of pretty much every disease. And for me, like I've been convinced of that. You can't tell me otherwise. I don't know if the average person has that belief, but when I went back to school and I started to pay so much attention to what I was consuming, it actually had the adverse effect where I became neurotic about what diet I needed to be on, what supplement I needed to take, what foods I needed to avoid. Like, if you've been in that situation where now you're starting to really pay attention, or maybe you've been put on a very strict protocol, you can think about those times where you wanted to go out for dinner with your friends, but you knew that was going to be a disaster, or maybe your family was having a get-together for dinner, but you were like the one person who had to be so specific and change a lot of the things that were being consumed or being cooked or provided in the meal. All these different scenarios in which you were actually adding stress to yourself, and you maybe had this feeling that you were adding a lot of stress to the situation in general and to the people around you, and everybody else had to pay so much attention to you and to the specific type of diet that you were on, right? So for me, that always added more stress to the situation. And the more that I learned about food and different types of toxicity that's in our food, and what gluten can do and what dairy can do, and all these things, I started to become very neurotic and paranoid about things that I was eating. And I noticed that every time I went to eat, my subconscious mind would be kind of telling me that, or like asking me, are you sure you should be eating this? What if this doesn't get digested properly? What's gonna happen afterwards after you eat this meal? And I was just putting myself in a flight or fight response more often than not. So I guess my point there is that, you could try to be as healthy as you possibly can, and you could actually be going against what you really need, and you can be putting yourself in a state that is actually very unhealthy. Now, I still believe that, there's some food that's obviously going to negatively impact your health, and there are foods out there that are going to be really beneficial for you. But you could find these practitioners that are saying, this is going to be the diet that saves your life. And there's been so many times where I've jumped on something and I've gotten my hopes up and I've been so excited and I've spent all this money because this is the solution. This is what's gonna bring me to a state of healing. And guess what? I was let down. And it wasn't until I really started to believe that I was the one who was capable of putting myself into the right state, not only physically but mentally. I mean, mentally to me is the number one thing, because if our thoughts are always ruminating and we're always going down these thought patterns that are keeping us in this state of feeling stuck or stressed or anxious, we're just adding all this fuel to the fire. And I believe that it's really the stress behind all of this that not only caused the illness, but is keeping us in this state. And there's gonna be practitioners that will definitely disagree with me. And again, these are just my beliefs. I don't expect anybody to necessarily jump on this and agree with me. But I do believe that if you are somebody who's managing inflammatory bowel disease, you're probably, and I've said this before, you're probably somebody who is really hard on themselves, and maybe you're a people pleaser. Maybe you really care what people think or say about you. When I was a kid, I was constantly picked on, and I moved around a lot because of some stuff that's going on with my family. So I was always the new kid, and I was shy, and other kids at school picked up on that, and they latched on to that, and they knew that I wasn't going to defend myself. And even people who were at the time, considered really good friends of mine that I would see on a daily basis, they loved picking on me because they knew that I wasn't going to confront them about it. And I was super nervous, and I was super intimidated by this. And guess where I felt all of that? In my stomach. Like, I would stay home from school with a nervous stomach so often. And every time I was forced into a confrontation or a conflict, I would feel that rumble in my stomach. And, after years and years of that happening, my body decided that was trauma. For me, that was trauma. And I know that there's various forms of trauma, and that's a pretty intense word to use, but trauma isn't necessarily the event that triggers it. It's really how your body, responds and reacts to the event. Like, that's the trauma. And when I think about the flares that I've had over the last few years, my body wanted to keep me in a state of feeling safe. My body was it's as if my body was going back to those days where I was being harassed at school and I wanted to stay home and feel safe. Guess what would happen when I would be in a really bad flare? I would stay home, I would feel safe, I wouldn't want to put myself in uncomfortable situations. And typically, in fact, pretty much every time a major flare happened, there was some sort of conflict. There was something in my life that I was really struggling to digest externally. And guess what? My body wouldn't digest the things that I was putting into it. Whether it was being rejected by a girl that I really liked, whether it was some sort of conflict with an individual at work or in my personal life, like me finding out that somebody was, conspiring against me or had all these feelings towards me that I couldn't handle. There was something going on in my life that was causing this buildup of emotions, these pent-up emotions that dated back to my childhood. After years and years of not defending yourself and not releasing these emotions that you feel, your body manifests that into disease. Like, that is truly how I feel. And I just wanted to bring this up with you guys, because if there's one thing that I would love for you to take away from this video, it's that, the more pressure you put on yourself, the harder it gets. In other words, really practicing surrendering and letting go of all these expectations that you're putting on yourself to eat a certain way or to feel a certain way or to benefit from a certain thing, that is where the true healing comes in. It's like allowing yourself to be grateful and allowing yourself to be okay with things that are happening to you both externally and internally. Because it can be really scary when you start to get into a flare and your mind is already looking ahead to situations that haven't technically happened yet, and maybe you have all these things that you've been planning for and it feels like they're never going to happen, and now you have to be patient and get through this experience again. But if we can surrender into that and take the pressure off of ourselves and say, this is nothing that I've done, this is nothing that I've eaten, this is my body sending me a reminder that it wants me to feel safe. And if you are somebody who has gotten to a really amazing place in your life and it's because of a diet or protocol that you were put on, then more power to you. I fully believe that, that was meant for you. That's the road that you were supposed to take. But I do believe one pattern that I've recognized from every testimonial or video that I've watched about people healing themselves through food and through diet and through supplements, it's that they had that mindset. Like, they went inwards first to believe that this was going to be the thing for them, and no matter what, they were going to come out on top because of this. So to me, that still goes back to the mindset thing and to kind of letting go of pressure and feeling empowered, right? And truly, I believe those people could have been put on a different protocol with the same mindset, and they would have had the same outcome. So I hope that makes sense for you guys. As I make videos and try to build this channel, I really just want people to know that they are capable of so much. And while we can all benefit from outside sources and people influencing us and teaching us things, the power is always within us. We are so powerful and we have so much abundance within, and learning to surrender into that and to know that no matter what happens, if you can love yourself through all of that and every time take a little bit more pressure off of yourself so that the next time it happens, it doesn't feel quite as severe as those times from before. Like, that to me is the ultimate peace in all of this. So thanks for listening, guys. As always, if you want to reach out to me directly, leave me a comment. You can reach me on Instagram at RyanAlexHarris, and let's connect and let's just continue to empower this community that we have the power to be great. And we can always dig ourselves out of a tough situation. Keep fighting the good fight. Never be afraid to speak your truth. Don't keep things bottled up. Work on expressing your emotions. And together we can heal. I love you guys. Thanks for listening.